everyone, and welcome back to the news. So, Amazon's first game release has already cut 2/3 of its modes amid rough reviews, but it does have a path forward. Then, Paradox employees have banded together in a, I'd say, decently rare move for the industry. Then, Infinity Ward are going pretty darn hard, at least they say, into enforcing their guidelines. EA are returning to Steam, and a whole bunch of other stories. As always, be sure to click all those good YouTube buttons to appease the bots. Truly does help us, actually. And if you like even more content, of course, check out the Patreon. That's where you'll get daily briefing, as well as a big old stack of physical loot and some other goodies too. So that's that, and let's get straight into the news. First up, we've actually got a bit of breaking news with Amazon's Crucible, which of course is, Amazon's big game release, free-to-play shooter that, released. It was free-to-play, and then it was pretty much wrecked critically. Honestly, a messy situation, and now very shortly after that launch, they're actually cutting 2 of the 3 game modes in it so that they can focus on the Hive mode. That's the one that players actually gravitated to. Pretty insane though, right? That's like 2/3 of the ways you can play the game while they're going to be gone. Now moving forward, they've got a 2-phase plan. Basically, phase 1 is to fix things up, to add in some clear things to solve problems like AFK players, and then phase 2 is to add in new systems to the game. And that's pretty much what's going on with Crucible. I think this is actually something where you could just look at it and laugh like, wow, 2 weeks after launch, they're already cutting their things. But at the end of the day, if the wind is clearly blowing in one direction, what are you going to do? Are you going to go against it, or are you going to realize, well, the Hive thing is the only thing we've actually got going for us here. How about we double down on that and actually make something good? I think this is actually the right move for that game. And look, I wish the developers the best of luck. Clearly, though, it just went out too early. Okay, let's get into the bigger story. So, EA actually launched over 25 games on Steam this week, finally making good on their promise to actually make their games available on multiple storefronts, not just Origin. EA Access will also be available on Steam this summer, though we're still waiting on confirmation of how that's exactly going to work. Now, in fairness, EA Access is actually a pretty good deal if you're also into the broader library of titles that it gives you, and I think what's core here to the analysis of this is that it gives Steam-only people a game subscription that they can avail of. Now, of course, Game Pass, that's not on Steam, but EA Access is, and that certainly will be a unique advantage that EA actually have in moving into this marketplace. Now, there are some solid titles on display so far, and there's actually some steep discounts to go with them, but it is worth noting that titles like Battlefield 5, Sims 4, and Apex Legends are not available, though EA did promise that more games are on the way. The Command & Conquer Remastered Collection also actually did release on both Origin and Steam today, which is pretty sweet. Now, part of me thinks that, a game like Sims 4, maybe a reason not to put that on Steam is that Sims 4 is so reliant on DLC sales and having a a deeply invested player base, and I just would wonder, would they want those DLC sales to, have a Steam cut coming out of them? Hard to say, really, but at least from a consumer perspective, it is good to see EA stuff be available on Steam. Obviously, more choice of platform is a good thing. And then we've got some other good news, actually. So Kingdoms of Amalur Re-Reckoning has also been confirmed, and Microsoft Store listing may have even let slip an August release date. Now, this is going to feature improved graphics, refined gameplay, and include all of the original's DLC. This is interesting. There was actually quite a lot to like about Kingdoms of Amalur, right? So I'd say that's actually a game that's in a pretty solid place to be updated in this manner. It's kind of weird, like the combat in it was pretty solid, pretty darn satisfying actually, so I'm pretty excited to see just how that can actually be refined and brought up. I just get the feeling that this is a game where if it had maybe 6 months more polish, a bunch of things would have been quite a bit better, and perhaps this remaster actually is their opportunity to do that. Now, the whole Kingdoms of Amalur IP, well, that's been in an awkward spot. It's been a bit of a mess following the collapse of baseball player Curt Schilling's big, huge games, which, they lost pre-production on a sequel, and then, of course, a lot of work on what their real end game was, which was to make a massive MMO. Of course, Curt Schilling was a really big World of Warcraft guy. Now that studio collapsed, there was a bunch of drama with Rhode Island and stuff there that I think you should really take a look at. Of course, for the original team, this isn't going to matter that much because they don't have jobs on this game anymore, but hey, maybe THQ Nordic would decide to do something else with this IP if Re-Reckoning is actually enough. And it does also make me think of another it's at least an Embracer Group project anyway, which is the Gothic remake. and, with that, like, they made this demo, the demo went out there, people were excited, and then they greenlit it. So that's just making me think, are what they're trying to do here, is it just looking at these older IPs that a lot of people know, and then doing some sort of relatively cheap in terms of development way to actually get them back to be a product that people can buy so they can actually market test those IPs and maybe, right, actually develop them a good bit more in the future. I've got to wonder if that's their strategy. If it is, I think it would certainly make a lot of sense. Then next, that big Sega announcement that was teased last week, well, seems to be large for Japan, but not really for any of the rest of us, because it's a fancy new arcade server tech called Foggy Gaming that pretty much will turn arcades into server farms, which is pretty cool. It's pretty big for Japan, right, where arcades are still quite a big thing, but not really so much for the Western markets, which sadly have lost the arcades. So you can see why it would be a major story for Famitsu, but not exactly for, just markets outside of Japan. So that's what that was, and let's move on. Well, we've got something decently exciting, because rumor has it that there's a Bloodborne remaster in the works that was due to be announced at the now delayed PS5 showcase last week. Now, it's reportedly headed for the PS5 and PC, though no timeframes are known yet. Though, one thing that is relevant here, and really is part of the reason why I'm actually covering this, is that Imran Khan did tweet that From Software fans have a lot of reasons to be happy in the next 2 years. So he said that. Nibble sort of retweeted or made comment on this as well, which is making me think that some of the more connected seeming people in the industry are talking about this leak. So I'm not going to tell you that it is the case, but certainly people are talking about it. Now, this rumor did come from a small YouTube channel called PC Gaming Inquisition. It claims 4K 60 FPS ultra wide support, which all would be great, but of course right now we just don't know if this is real. But still, this would fit into what Khan said, and I think he's a pretty well connected person in the industry. So yeah, could actually happen, and if it did, I think it would sell incredibly well. One of the reasons why I have not played Bloodborne is because it's not been available on my platform of choice. It's not been at 60 FPS, and it's frame timing issues, which I think really hurt its gameplay. If those could be fixed, I mean, man, that would be so many sales. Next, a story for the workers. So employees at Paradox have secured a collective bargaining agreement that is expected to safeguard existing benefits and facilitate things like pay increase discussions. And what's interesting is that Paradox seem pretty pleased about this themselves. They announced it via press release in the way that, they normally would for hyping up a game or something. Now, this just covers things like, overtime work, pension payments, parental leave, stuff that was already studio policy, but is now a bit more binding, a bit more codified, and in a way that actually gives employees a way, sort of a more formalized process for having their concerns heard. Now, while it did take Paradox a bit of time to consider the agreement, apparently once there was momentum, they were very, receptive of it, and they were pretty happy about it. Now, my core analysis here is that these collective bargaining agreements, they're very rare in the USA, and they're practically non-existent in the games industry. Very different situation in, the USA versus, France, and then, of course, in the USA, you always have the stories brought up about the auto workers' unions and things like that. And of course, where the auto manufacturing has went. So there is this whole sort of discussion of unions in the American cultural context that is a bit different in other parts of the world. And while Paradox's collective bargaining agreement will apply to their Swedish studios, it won't apply to their Europe and NA ones. But Paradox actually did say they'd be open to similar agreements with those studios. Now, overall here, what does this mean, right? Well, it means better severance pay, a way for if staff are not happy about things, they can actually bring that up in a more formalized manner, which I think is all fundamentally pretty okay stuff. And it's the sort of thing with unions, right, where when it's all going well, it's good for the workers and it's good for the business because everyone's happy, everyone's able to be productive, be taken care of, and there you go, stuff's good. And of course, with this stuff, it's a push and a pull. If stuff is way too pro-business and then a business acts in a not really a moral manner, then that can be pretty shit for the people who are working for them. But then, of course, right, if if it goes in the other direction and it's just not friendly for business, then yes, some tough decisions could be made on where, just where companies set up, and that's something you do see happen across the world. So an interesting situation. Overall for Paradox here, I'd say they're probably pretty much fine with it. I mean, they're in Sweden. I think stuff like that is a lot more of the cultural expectation there. And really, what choice would they have, right? Would they get rid of their staff? I mean, that would be a terrible look. So I think this is pretty much playing out in the way that it would play out. It'll just be interesting to see what happens then for the EU, and especially especially the NA studios. The next, Infinity Ward. So they are taking extra measures to stamp out racist language in Call of Duty. This is something they announced in the wake of everything else that is going on, and they've also made it so that every game of Modern Warfare multiplayer or Warzone starts with a message in support of BLM. Now, for the filters and stuff, I'm assuming this is less of a new thing and more just them ramping up existing systems, existing enforcement. Now, assuming they're sort of doing like a heuristic-based approach, right, getting a weighted community rule compliance score for each account, then they could quite simply just decrease the threshold at which an account action occurs, or maybe increase the weighting of certain types of guideline violation. Of course, though, they could just be using a more traditional case-by-case basis, in which case I've got to wonder what this really means. I mean, are they just throwing more manpower at manual reviews or things like that, or are they just tuning the existing systems to be a little bit less forgiving? It's hard to know, but that's what's going on, and certainly the effects of this, well, we'll just have to wait and see what it actually means in terms of account actions, and if players actually notice anything there. The next, a small enough update to what was a big story. So, of course, we all know Bungie left Activision, right? And, they did that, and then I think they had 2 or 3 more seasons of their already planned content that went out. And then they kicked off year 1 of their wholly exclusively developed content. Well, of that year 1, 3 seasons have happened. And in fairness, there has been a fair bit of drama because cosmetics, microtransactions, right, like just the ways of customizing your character via gameplay haven't been that great. Some of the content people have thought's been pretty boring and repetitive. Generally, there's just this feeling that they're trying to squeeze a lot of gameplay hours out of just not making that much content, which, yeah, is, I think a thing worthy of criticism. Well, what happened is that Destiny have, at the 9th of June, the reveal of the final part of the first year of sort of Destiny 2 under their tenure. Now, I do even wonder if that reveal will happen because Blizzard had a World of Warcraft event on the 9th that they also cancelled because of everything else that's going on. So hard to know there, but yes, this would mark the start of the end of the first year of Destiny 2, and it does have me thinking about what the second year would look like. For me personally, to actually get back into that game, what I would need is them to just make more content, more things to do, and work out how to make it feel like less of a job, which for a game like Destiny that inherently just sort of is digital work with nice, visual effects and fun gameplay, it's kind of hard to see how they could do that, but certainly Destiny has always felt like it's just been missing something for me. So yeah, there you go. That's a quick update on Destiny. It'll be interesting to see how Bungie chart a path forward in this post-Activision world. Of course, the other angle there is that they did have their massive investment that they received, and that was for another project, I believe, in new IP, and that's still something we have not heard anything about. So maybe in the next year we'll be seeing a lot more of Bungie in the way of expansion. So there you go. I mean, even though we had quite a number of major stories over the last few days, still plenty of stuff to cover. It's crazy how much actually goes on in the games industry. Now, to end things, this is actually good timing because we just received, no, holding them backwards is not the thing to do. There, hold them like... That's very awkward. We just got our Patreon loot in for the printers for this month, so I can actually show you what it is. This special is... basically, right, it's based off sort of the source inspirations of some of the new zones in the newest WoW expansion, where they're kind of like afterlives. So this is the more like sort of gothic vampire-y one, but we're going to be doing for future months, the Roman and Greek afterlives and a bunch of stuff like that. Norse stuff as well, which I'm really looking forward to. So that's one of the things. And then our main art stuff, this, it's based, sort of based off like the Tauren of Warcraft, which really is the sort of Great Plains and aesthetic of America. So we got those guys going on. And then I wish I could show you the Druid pin, but it actually arrives on Monday, which is a few days after this is being recorded. So that's what's going on for this month's loot, and I'll be able to show it off to you properly, at the top of video soon enough once I get shots of it all. But anyway, that super does help us. Of course, if you want to watch some other content, I mean, yeah, we had a whole bunch over the last week, a lot of really interesting stories. So I hope you enjoyed that. Thanks for watching this week, and with that, I'll see you next time.